My name's Stephen Boucher, PSNID Steve Big Guns. That's what I'm known for on the LBP games. I've pretty much been there since LBP 1 and kind of made stuff on LBP 3 as well, so it's kind of all the way through. Pretty much first level I ever made was like a Mario type level. It's kind of first thing you want to make is something you enjoy. A lot of people make games they kind of like and they kind of enjoy, so they want to make something similar. So that's what I started off as, and then making something kind of my own ideas after that, pretty much carrying on that throughout LBP 1, making a lot of various levels. I guess, what was it, LBP 2, well, an offer to kind of headhunted to work at Sumo Digital on LBP 3, so that's when I started getting into being an actual game developer, or being paid for one, since it's kind of game developer anyway. If you're making stuff in LBP, it's kind of the same thing. It doesn't really change. Like making levels in the community in LBP 3 is kind of, it's the same thing. I had an interview and then went up there. I think it was like Christmas, so it's kind of rushing up right a few days before Christmas in the snow. Yeah, and then getting there and then kind of meeting all the other people there, and then kind of starting the next the next month afterwards. So it's kind of a bit of a rush and kind of a weird situation. It's like suddenly you're going from making stuff at home and then suddenly kind of being in an actual game studio and then just moving up the country. That's quite a big shift, and it's like, yeah, I've been doing that ever since. So I worked on LBP 3 from the start, when that was actually, it wasn't even LBP 3 initially, it was a Star Wars spin-off game. So it is, I think it's using like particle fluids. So that's the main hook, like particle fluids, but mixed with Star Wars. So it doesn't really match up. So the initial thing was trying to find ideas of how we can get particle fluids working in Star Wars. So it's, on the ship something's leaking, or just these random ideas, or maybe there's like quicksand or things like that, how you can, or just temperature, things are just cold and fluids melt or something and freeze, and kind of mechanics, and then the situations where they'd be within Star Wars. So we just watched the main three Star Wars films when we got there. It's kind of weird. And we also did some like prototyping as well at home, actually, on LBP 2, of some ideas, where a lot of stuff we actually made then came through quite late in LBP 3. I don't know if you seen it. I can't remember what it is. I think it's like SpongeBob or something. There was like water material that you could swim in. I think that was it. That was one of that was my prototype initially that I'd done way back before even being hired to work there. That's kind of just to show some ideas of what you can actually do with it. I remember seeing some LBP hub stuff. Well, it's kind of showing off the functionality of the hub stuff, which was, I think you could like, a bit like kind of racing a ghost in stuff like the Mario games, or like Rayman, where you could race for the best times and you'd see like I think it's like a decoration stuck on something, and that represent like points of other people's times that kind of record your path through the level and not actually show the character, but you kind of would race against that. And then obviously that wasn't in it, so it kind of just changed to be a standard level, so it's kind of modified afterwards. The 3D camera glitch with that combine, the 3D layers and then the 3D camera ways looking down at a level, because obviously a level looks flat, but then you could use the layer glitching to make it look higher than it is, so you could kind of exploit that and just try to make a level with it like an FPS one, right? It's just trying to figure a way out how to rotate the level around the character, because you couldn't, I think the 3D camera, you couldn't rotate it at all. It'd just be like facing up the world all the time, like just one, it'd just be locked, like the orientation would be locked, so you couldn't change it. So to hack that, you had to like come up with ways to get rotation. You have to actually move the level around the character. So if you imagine like rather than the character moving around, the level's moving around the character. It's quite hacky ways to deal with these like problems. You have to make something with it. It's kind of fun in itself, just trying to find these ways. It's kind of a bit of a challenge.
The FPS gun game that you made. I've seen a bit of it on YouTube. So is that the level that you're on about?
Yeah. I was trying to make. I think like trying to make the idea of like a footstep, because it's like the camera just goes like that. I was trying to use camera shake, but it's like the minimum amount I could get working was like every set the camera would just be like slammed into the ground. It was probably better than the alternative of just being smooth. I don't know. Trying to get some kind of camera movement. It's kind of a bit hacky to achieve it. It's kind of a bit random. Some stuff would just like disappear, and shadows would be popping in and out because the render distance in shadows is only like the bounds of the screen. So when you're looking ahead of the screen distance, like shadows would just go invisible, so they'd be popping in and out, and you're looking down the level, which you're not supposed to do. So yeah, just get to certain situations where you look at a lot of stuff and then suddenly it just disappears and shows an exclamation mark. And yeah, it's still fun to do. You can like, you have to optimize for it. I didn't really bother. I just kind of made a level and some stuff just go out. But it's like, yeah, it's kind of nice to see. It's kind of how far you can push it, really. I voted Creator of the Year, which is quite nice as well. That was like after joining Sumo. That's like, yeah, that's like making stuff in LBP before then. I started making stuff, and yeah, that was just like, yeah, just thanks to anyone who voted for me for that. Cause that's, yeah, it's like only ever, I think there's only ever one game like you only ever. So I think Dreams had it like every year, but LBP only seemed to have it for the first initial year. Not having any internet because I was moving house at the same time, so I just decided I'd like start working on an actual level. And yeah, it's just make a Mario game, but then make something that you find interesting at the same time. And it's quite, rather than having to start on something and come up with an idea, it's quite easy to start on something like that and kind of add all the fun gameplay moments, and then it kind of gave me kind of confidence in then making my own kind of ideas afterwards. But it's still quite a good level. I was like watching a video the other day, and that's my first level, and it's like never designed anything or made a game in my entire life. You know, no actual gameplay, and it's like, yeah, it's still quite good. Like some of the gameplay could be improved, but it's got like a cool like ideas, and I guess a lot of the design, like how you go about learning design, like in the, you know, working in an actual studio making games yourself. Like LBP was really good for that because you'd get feedback immediately, and you'd actually, playing other people's levels, you'd learn a lot of like what you actually find fun. And a lot of people would do that. Like they'd play a level and go, I like this mechanic, and try to modify it. I like these things, and they'd kind of try to emulate that, but then push it further each time, so that the levels would just get more evolved every time. You know, as time went on, they'd become more evolved and be taking previous ideas, and you'd actually learn a lot. Like I pretty much learned everything I know about game design just by LBP, because it's different to like working in a game studio where you work on a game for, I don't know, like, you know, imagine Dreams like eight years or something. Although it's like, well, I guess people at the start, it was probably like 8 years before it was actually released. But if you went from like never making a game or releasing anything and working on that, you'd never get feedback on if what you're doing is actually good, other than user tests near the end, where but user tests, it's a small group of people, and the questions they asked, and they don't really, some of the feedback may just, I don't know, it's like whether you find this thing interesting, but it's not as deep feedback as like people are really honest when in LBP, like they'll just like post comments, and you have your friends, like when we had like online or just generally friends on PlayStation Network, they just give you honest feedback on what they think about it, so you'd kind of develop your skills that way quite quickly as well. Like you release level after level, and you progressively increase your like skills.
Wanting to do kind of like a segment talking about a crown, and you know, you obviously got a crown, you got team picked. Do you remember what your reaction was when you got the crown item on LittleBigPlanet?
I think like, you know, James Spafford, or Spaff, who's kind of known in LBP, I think he just gave me one when I went to like the game jam. He went, oh, you haven't got a crown yet. Is that okay? It's just like, crown. But yeah, I think that's how I actually got one. It's just, I think there was like ways you can go about it, like competitions and things like that. But yeah, I think he just like given it to me, and then, but by that time, I think everyone could get a crown by, I think it's like a glitch, but everyone was just wearing crowns anyway. I remember just seeing online where everyone, this person's got a crown. It's like there's just some glitch where you could just get it, and everyone would suddenly have a crown on them.
How did your LBP2 level affect LBP3's gameplay?
Things like toggle the ability to. That's just the mechanic of going from small to large, and then using the mass and the small shape to, as you get through smaller areas, kind of made a level. Going through that, which is more of a race level. Yeah, that level was kind of informed that character, since we needed a character. Sony wanted like multiple characters with different silhouettes. Like it's mostly I think you need a quadruped, a kind of bird because they're vastly different, and then something that was kind of large. I think they wanted quite a large, tall character, and I think the idea, obviously, a large, tall character isn't good for gameplay. The idea is to have that combined with like a smaller character, and use the mechanics similar to what I had, and it could, you could have a large character and a smaller one in one, and it kind of ticked the box of the silhouette, but then also have an interesting mechanic. I made like a Super Bunny level with wall jumping and stuff. I think that ended up as a mechanic for Oddsock, because I made a prototype for that as well, the wall jumping one. So I liked wall jumping, so we could finally achieve it, and it's a fun mechanic, like it's in all the Mario games and stuff like that, and to finally be able to do that it opened up like a lot of gameplay opportunities that was just fun to do. So the DC pack came out, which I think Tarsier came round at some point, but yeah, they came round at some point and just seen some of the prototypes of like the wall jumping mechanics and like swoop and stuff. And then the DC pack came out like a few months later, which wasn't the best thing, since it's like kind of two of the characters were based on the same mechanics, and it's got the wall jump material and obviously the cape, which is probably, I kind of found they worked a bit better as power-ups rather than being bespoke characters, since you could make a level where you could swap characters in a single level, but you can make a level that you could turn the power-up on and off with the power-up, I think the power-up giver, and then you could obviously use the wall jump where you want based on the material type. But yeah, it's still kind of cool to have something in a game. And the swoop actually behaves slightly different, since you could pick stuff up as well, and you could flap a few times or flap around the level. I've seen like some stuff of it which kind of looks interesting. I guess a lot of the fan base of LBP will go to that one just to try it out. So it should kind of hopefully do well, just based on like having like the LBP fan base and wanting to try it, just to see what it's like. Like a lot of games, they come out and it's very similar, and it's like, I don't know what the price will be, but yeah, just to see what it's actually like in comparison. So it's got crate mode and stuff.